Pastor Ray here. Hope you're enjoying our study on why can't you be normal like me, as we dive in and try to determine which temperaments we have and how we interact with one another. So enjoy and join in as we begin the first part of the sermon from yesterday, as well as the opening video of why can't you be normal just like me.
Just my luck. A heffalump, leering at his lunch. Not that anyone will notice.
Swim, swim, swim!
Just have to go with the flow.
Don't worry.
I'm not. Can't change the inevitable.
Hello, Eeyore.
Hello, heffalump.
What were you doing in the water?
Just an average Wednesday morning for me.
Come on, Eeyore. Let's get to the bottom of this.
I'm already at the bottom. It's kind of you to kidnap me.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Not exactly what I had in mind.
Look! It's just the old weather vane.
Great. Now it has a weapon. Looks like a disaster. Why wasn't I invited? Follow them and we'll find Piglet.
Now that is... I'm sorry, Albine. Come on.
Just getting comfortable.
Let's go and see if we can't find Piglet.
Goodbye, Bucket.
Another one?
You don't have to tell me every time you pick one up.
Come on, Eeyore. You'll be my witness.
Oh, sure. Sacrifice the donkey.
Well done, Eeyore. Keep up the good work.
Finally good at something. There goes the tail.
Rain protection.
What do you think? I know what I think. Does this make me look husky?
You look like a sad house.
Oh, danger. Oh, right where I belong.
Panic, worry, catastrophe. Speed, danger, recklessness.
Disgrace, shame, humiliation.
Are you getting on in there?
Dark, gloomy. You should just leave me here.
You must be Christopher Robin's wife. Ha! How do you do?
My bum hurts.
You are an Eeyore or not, but today we are going to look at temperament number 2 in our series called Why Can't You Be Normal Just Like Me? And Eeyore is a melancholic. And what's interesting is if you look at TV shows, if you look at books, if you look at movies, a lot of times there are all 4 temperaments represented. So when you think of Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore is the melancholic, kind of gloomy and doomy type of personality. Winnie the Pooh is the phlegmatic, Tigger is the sanguine, and Rabbit is the choleric, and the choleric is the one we looked at last week. But as we're going through this series, we've had a couple of theme verses that we've tried to highlight each week as a reminder of how we need to get along with one another. The first one is Acts 15, verse 7. And it says, accept one another just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. Can we click on the slide, gentlemen? Thank you. Anyway, so we need to accept one another, and that doesn't mean that we give a license for everything. We don't say everything is okay. We don't endorse everything, but we accept each other as Christ has accepted us when you think about that. And then the second verse was John 13, 34, and 35, which says that we need to, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this will you know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And so as we are called to accept and love each other, we are to do that, people all around us, the ones in front, beside, around, our family members, our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends. But what's real easy for us to do is to look at everyone and say, you know what? They're just kind of strange. We see their quirks and their weirdness and we think, why can't you be normal just like me? And their attitudes and actions stress us out. So what do we try to do? We try to recreate people like us. And we know that that just really goes bad, because we want them to think what we think and feel what we feel and value what we value. But it just doesn't work that way. And then we looked at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and we saw how God made each of us different. And he's given us all these different gifts, and they all work together to form one body. But then what's interesting is if you go on to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we notice that it's all backed up with love. It needs to be all backed up with love. 1 Corinthians 13, it says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give everything over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And those verses tell us that we need to operate out of, we need to function, we need to do life with the basis out of everything with love. Because if we don't, if our actions aren't based in love, these verses talk about the fact that our actions are like a loud, hideous noise, a clanging cymbal, a gong, and we've gained nothing. And then last week we looked at Proverbs 22 and one of the most misunderstood verses in the Bible, and we talked about how it said that we needed to study our children and work with their temperament bent instead of fighting against it and trying to make them like us. Because it said, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And what we said was if you study the bent of your child and cooperate with it in those teenage years, they won't turn you off. And we said, is it a promise? No, it's not a promise, because it's the book of Proverbs. It's a principle. And so in the last several weeks, we've looked at all these different personality traits, and there's 4 pairs, 2 on each continuum, and that you fall in one or the other side of the continuum. And we talked about your source of emotional energy. Is it energized by experiences, or is it energized by ideas, an extrovert or an introvert? Your information gathering, are you more concrete, like sensing, or are you more abstract, like the innovator? How do you make decisions? Are you a thinker that you need facts, or are you a feeler that it colors with your decisions? And then how do you face tomorrow? Are you a just do it type of person, or are you a just wing it type of person? And so I talked about the fact that we were supposed to be in colors. And we had colors, well, let's see, oh, it's working now. Yay, let me get to where I'm supposed to be. That was red, blue, green, and yellow. What color are you? How many of you know, or you think you know, what temperament you are? Just raise your hand. I'm not going to ask you. Okay, how many are confused? How many don't raise their hands in church? Ha ha ha, I got you. I did put out a temperament quiz if you want to check that out. It's really simple, temperamentquiz.com, I think. It's pretty straightforward. But the colors we talked about and the temperaments. Today we're going to talk about the melancholic SJ. They're the sensing, judging type of people. They are the Boy Scouts of society. They're going to help the little lady across the street whether she needs it or not. Their motto, let me help you. The phlegmatic is the introvert or the innovator and the feeler. And they're the buddies of society. Their greatest sense of significance and fulfillment is when they marry one of these other temperaments and make them the best that they can be. And then we talked about the fact that the sanguine are the bikers of society, the born to be wild type of people. And they're the ones that are just going through life at breakneck speed. And then last week we talked about the choleric, the extrovert who's the innovator and the thinker. They're the builders of society. They're always building something. And it's never finished, because once they build it, they're like, oh, it's not good enough, it's not complete enough, and they just keep going and going and going. It can be improved upon. Excellence is just beyond their reach. So that's why they are always building or redecorating. And all these temperaments have wonderful strengths, and they do have some potential pitfalls. In fact, if we're left to ourselves, these temperaments, if they're not tamed, can be destructive to every relationship that you have, not only personally, but in society. And that's why we said, and we will be saying, every temperament needs to be tempered. It needs to be gone through with the filter of who Jesus is and what he does in our lives. Because if we don't live that way, we're going to learn about these temperaments and go, well, that's the way God made me, and you're just going to have to deal with it. But that's not what we are studying this for. We're studying this for the fact that God calls us to accept one another, to love one another, to better understand one another. And so when we start to understand who we are and we understand who the person we're talking to is, that helps us deal with each other. It helps us fulfill not only the accept one another command and the love one another command, but there are a whole bunch of other commands that have one another attached to them. And it helps us fulfill those. Because if we don't try to understand and accept one another, do you know what happens? I speak out of my experience and my temperament, but then you listen to me out of your experience and your temperament. And those two don't always match up. And that's how misunderstandings start. So our temperaments need to be transformed by Christ. And when we become a Christian, when we become a follower of Jesus, it says in 2 Corinthians 5:17, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. And so Christ is going to connect with us, and he's going to shave off those rough things, those pitfalls, those weaknesses, and he's going to maximize our strengths so that we can become the people that God created us to be.